pleasure speaking to Shane today. Shane will be coming up on nearly 6 years recovery. He's coming up on 6 years recovery in December. So congratulations first on getting that as far as you have today. And I wanted to. This is a subject I think at the minute I think is it's not overlooked, but there's a problem with the uses of substances, whether it's be prescribed, non-prescribed. So this has really sparked my interest, and we kind of got in contact to talk about it. So congratulations so far, but it hasn't been an easy road for you, I would think. So how are you on? Thank you for your time. But how does it feel to be coming up on a milestone like that?
Thanks a million. Yeah, it's great to be chatting about this, and it's kind of scary at times when I think about it, like how long it's been. It doesn't feel that long sometimes, like especially if you're having a tough day or something like that, and it can bring me back sometimes to the mindset that I used to have, 24/7. But it's I kind of live my life today. You'll hear people in recovery always saying one day at a time. And it is like that. I literally I don't count the days anymore. I know my clean and sober date, but I don't count anymore. So it is literally just every day I wake up, I go, geez, thank God. I go to bed and I say, thank God.
Yeah, no, it must be hard. And you mentioned there, obviously, you don't count the days anymore, and it is still one day at a time. With the length of time that you've been sober, I would think people would be under the presumption of it's been that long, it must be easier for them now. But that wouldn't be the case. Like that really, like, especially with prescription pills or, like I said, non-prescribed, whatever your choice of poison was. It still is every day. Like I said, when you have a bad day, it's so easy to think back to that mindset.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the last couple of years, um, I've been working with a couple of people that are in recovery as well, and it's really, really helped me. And you'll hear people in recovery again talking about 12-step programs and different fellowships and meetings and things like that that you can go to, and they've saved my life without doubt. That's what saved my life. That's why I'm here today. I believe I've got a disease of addiction, which causes me to be, obsessed with either using or drinking or whatever the addiction might be at that time. Once I have one, I can't stop. I physically can't stop. But yeah, like in the last couple of years, it's things have been amazing for me. I feel like I've got a few little barriers in front of me, like from a relapse. Whereas in early recovery, it's petrifying because you don't want to go back. The last couple of years of my drinking and using was against my will. Like I didn't want to drink and use, but I couldn't stop. So I'd say the first year, once I realized I got as far as I've ever been, I was kind of like, holy shit. It was like climbing up on a really tall ladder and you're scared of heights and you look down, you go, fuck. But no, like I have to say the last couple of years, I feel amazing. I feel really strong in recovery. But it took me a long, long time to get to that place.
Yeah, and I'm glad obviously you got so far and you've done so well. But I kind of want to go back to not even when you realized or thought that, like you said, it was kind of against your will, you had to drink. But like, what was your kind of like, what did you start, if you're comfortable talking about, like, what was it that you started? Was it drinking? There was drugs as well. What was involved in, what was your kind of earliest memories of drinking and doing that? And how did it kind of get introduced to
Like from a very young, like when I was really young, I moved over to England. Like I'm from Tullamore originally, and my family moved over to England, and we lived above pubs in England. We moved around a lot. We lived in, I think, 3 different pubs in England. Um, so I was always around alcohol. Even when we were in Tullamore, my mum and dad had a pub. Um, Whenever we go to visit family or go on holidays or something like that, you'd always stop in a pub or a hotel on the way there. And as a kid, you'd have a fizzy drink and a packet of crisps, and the parents, you get letters.
It's I always say that if I see a glass bottle of Coke and a packet of potato, that is the all Irish sign of neglect.
Yeah. Yeah, a
Would you
kid playing on
agree?
a pool table by himself.
Yeah, but you'd be delighted. You'd be delighted because you drink more Coke than you've ever been able to
Yeah,
drink, and you'd be just bought crisps bars. You got to see all your cousins or all your friends, and it was probably the best time ever for you at the time.
yeah, Yeah, like it was like there wasn't like I had a good childhood. I had a really good childhood. I'm blessed with that. I'm blessed with the family that I have. But yeah, like the crisps and the fizzy drinks, like what did you get from Santi? I got diabetes. Um, but it was yeah, that was my earliest memories. Like there was always alcohol around, always in pubs, very, very young age. When I lived in pubs, um, like I'd see people drinking in the mornings and stuff like that. So it was normal. That was like normal to me. So when I got to that early teens kind of age where I was, my head state was like I need to escape. I need to do something, whether it was smoking cigarettes or drinking. I always wanted to do something that was going to get me out of my head. So I'd say, yeah, from a very young age, like I've always been around alcohol.
Yeah, and with the obviously you're saying you've seen people, obviously you now looking at that, people coming in and drinking that early in the morning, you know that now that's not normal. But at that time you didn't know any different, especially when you're young growing up, you don't know any different. That's what you see on a day-to-day basis. You're not gonna know any better. So from there, like between drinking and smoking, like what were your kind of like early 20s? Like was it just drinking all the time? Was there drugs involved?
Yeah, I from God, from the age of 16, drugs came into things. Started smoking, actually probably younger than that. I was in school. I was smoking a lot of weed. Again, it was one of those things I never took to. I never really enjoyed it, but I did it because the lads around me were doing it. And we'd do it during the day at school. We'd go around someone's house in the evenings and do it. Then at the weekends we'd get drink, we'd go to house parties, all that type of stuff. And then when I got to 18, it was going to pubs, like legally drinking in pubs, and that's when things like party drugs like coke and pills and stuff like that came into it. Um, and yeah, I thought I'd arrived once I started on the party drugs. I thought like I think most people's first experience on things like that is Jesus, this is amazing. Um, but yeah, that my early 20s was it was revolved around drinking, taking drugs, partying. There wasn't much in terms of building a life for myself. I didn't really know how to live as an adult, as in paying bills, paying for cars, even. Like I never really had a legal car. I always had stuff coming through the door, like these red letters saying you owe this, you owe that. I'd get paid, and I'd just be like, "Well, I drink. Well, this is for drink. This is for drugs. Oh, well, I've got nothing else for anything else, like bills and stuff." So it was just carnage. That's just how I lived my life then.
It's mad and how when you see the bills coming, you're like, I have to pay this bill, I have to pay this bill, have to pay this bill. And you're like, I can't even buy myself a sandwich now after. Whereas before you're like, this is for this and that. Whereas now, obviously, because you're sober, that wouldn't even dream come in. Like something extra for yourself is kind of nice. Whereas now it's all bills. But you said something actually and it intrigued me because I like especially with I think cocaine and alcohol predominantly people think it's just kind of certain types of people that use it. But I think especially cocaine is massively all over this country. But like what it has no barriers, whether it's sex, age, where you come from. And you said obviously you had a good upbringing. Usually when people associate drugs and drinking problems, stuff like that, they associate people with maybe Joe in areas that aren't that well, like that don't have that much going on or the deprived areas. But it just shows that it can get anybody, can't it?
Yeah, no, I mean addiction doesn't discriminate. I mean, I remember when I first went into a recovery room, like an AA meeting or an NA meeting or something like that. And one of the things that surprised me most was my misconception of what an addict was or what an alcoholic was. It was the guy on the park bench drinking from a bottle in a paper bag. It was um it was the guys on the street live like that were homeless asking you for spare change and things like that. That was what I thought an alcoholic or a drug addict was. When I went into those rooms, I was met with these fresh-faced, um, really, really friendly, loving people that were male, female, old, young. There were doctors, guards. There were some people that, yeah, had had horrific upbringings and were homeless and unemployed and stuff like that. But there was 16-year-olds in there and there was 70, 80-year-olds in the room. And I just looked around and we all had the same common problem. and we all related with each other because of that. But that was the most comforting thing to me when I walked in first. Was there's always that worry, like, oh Jesus, what if I see somebody I know? And it's like, well, they're in there as well. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't discriminate. It really, really doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, no, it doesn't discriminate. Like, it could be people from different sexes, ages, different areas, upper class, middle class, lower class. It all like that. Once you get hold of, because especially alcohol is legal and it's all over the place, anyone can get their hands on. Like I said, cocaine, especially now, is everywhere. Like, I could literally walk out my door and within 2 minutes probably have whatever I wanted. You know, the sort of way.
Mm.
And then obviously it's getting a bit more scary with the likes of crack and um potentially fentanyl coming to the streets of Dublin, because I work in Dublin city centre. You actually work in the city centre as well, and it's kind of horrific when you see it there. But to get to those meetings, you had to actually, like, what like, because obviously in your early 20s you're having fun, you're doing this, you don't care about bills, you don't care about cars. At that stage it's all a bit of fun, but at some stage it does turn. Like, what was it that turned it for you? Did you hit a rock bottom, or what was it that made you think, right, this needs to stop?
I I got into a stage like at the first. I always say to people that if you could get Shane 4 beers in, you'd have the best person around, like the best company in the world. I'd make you laugh, I'd tell jokes, I could talk to women, I could do anything, but I couldn't stop. And I would get messy. I'd do anything. I'd do stupid things when I was drunk. I used to. I remember once I jumped out in front of a car just to make somebody laugh, like a car driving past, and I would take anything. Like I would take too many of something. I didn't care. I had no safety seal on my thinking. There was absolutely nothing whatsoever. So by the end of a night, I was a nuisance to have around sometimes. And I would get myself. I remember towards the end of my drinking, like I would get quite angry and quite upset and not know why. I'd end up in tears sometimes, and I know some of my friends over the years would probably go, "Yeah, I remember that." Um, but I didn't know what was wrong with me, and that was the thing. Like it would get to an end of a night, everybody would go home. You might even go to an afters, and then everybody would go home, and I still wouldn't want to finish. And I would get so depressed and so fucking down, and I would get suicidal, and that feeling got worse and worse, and it got like it was there all the time. Um, I think I got to a stage in my 20s where I kind of thought I was going to die in my late 20s, by suicide or by overdose or something like that. And I'd kind of resigned to the fact. I was just kind of calm with the feeling that, yeah, that's probably my ending. And that's a horrible, horrible way to be. Not thinking that I was worth anything to anyone. Um, I didn't think much of myself. So I always had that thought that people thought that of me as well. So I would try so hard for people to like me, or to fit in. So having that feeling and that thought like constantly in my head, throwing drink and drugs in on top of that, I was lethal.
Yeah, it is. And there's a big, obviously, problem with men's mental health. And I'm not saying this about all of them, but I think a lot of it is fueled by the likes of drinking drugs. I think, like you said, you were angry and you were crying and you didn't know why. And this is just, I'm not doctor, but I'm just presuming it's probably some sort of, it's just you're trying to mask some sort of other issue that you need to kind of work through or get to the bottom of. Sometimes people don't even know what that is. You know, the sort of way
Mm.
they need to go talk to someone or whatever. But like, when you get to that stage and you feel like you're nothing, and like you've resigned yourself to basically saying, I'm dying young and that's it, like, that's quite sad to hear that you had to go through that. When, like, you're nearly 6 years now, but it wasn't like, did you try before and it didn't work out? Was there a lot of stop starts?
Yeah, like whenever I'd get myself in trouble with something, whenever I don't know, I'd do something stupid and like cheat on a girlfriend, or I'd get into a row in a bar, or I'd borrow money off someone I should have borrowed money off, or something like that. I'd go, right, that's it. I'm going to stop now. I'm not going to do it anymore. That's the last time. No more. I'm going to behave myself now. And oh God, the amount of times they've tried doing that, where I'd say, right, that's it. I'm not going to drink spirits anymore. Spirits is my problem. And I wouldn't drink spirits, and I'd go belugas on something else. And I go, right, that's it. No more drugs, no more drugs. I'm just me. I'm just gonna have a couple of bottles of lager. Sure, as soon as I had one, it was all systems go. Like I could not stop, even if I wanted to. Like I couldn't. Um, it was just it was non-stop. It was absolutely non-stop, and I couldn't. If I didn't have um, if I didn't have drink, or if I didn't have money for drink, I'd be morbidly depressed because I just had nothing else. I had absolutely nothing else to me. Like my family were around that time, they were dotted around the world. I think my brother was either in England or America. I had another brother that was back home in Ireland. My parents were in Ireland. And I was on my own over in England like for the last few years. And it was just terrible. It was terrible. Like all my friends around me were all like getting into relationships and doing well in their jobs, getting ready to buy houses, getting married, having kids, all that type of stuff. And I was still behaving like a 16-year-old kid. And I just had a drink for the first time. Like I was in bars with people that were way older than me, borrowing money. Um, and I was only happy once I'd got a few bob in my hand so I could, go and drink and then anything else that came with it.
That must have been hard as well, having your family obviously around the place, because that's one of my questions I was going to ask you. All your, like you said, that must have hurt as well, your friends moving on, and you could see them visibly moving on, but you're still in that same place. Did that have an effect on you at the time? Did you think of it at the time, or looking back on it now, do you think that was probably another issue that exacerbated my drinking problem?
Oh, I hated it. I hated it. When I used to see lads that I used to hang around with having 4 or 5 beers and then saying, right, I'm heading off, I've got work tomorrow. Or, oh, I'm heading down to the girlfriend's. Or, no, I'm only having one tonight because I'm driving. And they'd have nice clothes and they'd have nice cars and they'd go on holidays and things like that. And I couldn't do any of those things. Like literally all of my money went on drinking, and like drugs as well around that time. But it used to break my heart. Like when I'd see people and I was constantly borrowing money. Um, like every weekend would come up, will you lend me this? Will you lend me that? And then I'd have the fear in my head, right? I owe this person, I owe that person. So you wouldn't go to certain places then because you owed people. Um, oh, it was a nightmare, absolute nightmare.
Yeah, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul sort of a thing every week.
Exactly, yeah.
That you're, yeah, as soon as you get this money, you have to go to him, give it back to him, and then try to get money off someone else. And like when they were moving on and they were doing that, and with your family all around the world, were you obviously, were your friendships affected? Did you have a partner or anything at the time? Did you have kids right at that time? Were you, like, how did that affect like your work life, your personal life with people, or were you working at the time?
Yeah, work was always an issue, up until kind of the last 6 years, really. I done well to stay in some jobs. Um, I'd always be late. Always, I was the guy on Mondays that was calling in sick. If I wasn't calling in sick, I was turning up late saying, "Oh, I ran over a cat" or something stupid. Um, but yeah, work was always an issue from my very first job. I was a mechanic for my first job, um, and for 3 years I was late pretty much every day. And I remember it used to drive my boss crazy. He'd be like, "What are you doing? Like, can you not just get up in the morning?" I was like, "Yeah, I can, but I sleep through my alarm." Of course, I wasn't saying like I'm out every night getting absolutely plotto. But yeah, jobs was always an issue. Relationships as well. I always struggled in relationships because I couldn't really explain at that time what I felt was wrong with me because I didn't know myself. Um, Whenever anybody got close to me, whether it was a relationship or a good friend or family member or something, and they were around me long enough, they'd see that my drinking was, it was ridiculous. Like I drank way too much and I couldn't stop. I couldn't control myself. I couldn't look after money, all those types of things. But like I wouldn't do things I was supposed to do with partners, and I wouldn't go to family gatherings and things like that. I just wouldn't show up. Um, and I was just constantly in this anxiety as well of what people thought of me and stuff like that. It was constant. So relationships and work, I always struggled with, really, really badly.
Yeah, I'd say that. And like that, the family functions, and you were saying that you're worried about what people think about you. And isn't it funny? Because I've seen it myself with people, and even myself, I've done it in my days, is what you do is I'm really nervous about meeting this people. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get absolutely shit faced and then make an absolute show of myself. But
Yeah,
that is the thinking though, isn't it?
yeah,
It's like I want to get this to loosen up. But then you still, like I said, you start having a bit of crack with them, they start having a bit of crack with you, and then it's like you go overboard then, and then you're not allowed back to any more family functions
yeah.
if you did go in the first place. But like I said, with a lot of the stop starts, you obviously you gave me your date. I think it was the 20th December, obviously 6 years ago. So when you started, like you said, when you got to the first year and you couldn't believe you'd gotten that long. By the sounds of things, even if you had got to like 3 months, probably would have been a long time as well.
Yeah.
But once you kind of, what was that first year like? How did your life dramatically improve? Because I know there's going to be some things that obviously as time goes on will get better and better. But straight away, what were the best effects of giving up drinking?
I suppose the first when I tried to stop drinking, um, and take well, no, when I tried to stop drinking, before I ever went to like a recovery room or a meeting or anything like that, the most I ever got was I think 3 months. That seemed to be where I started to feel and look better, and I'd get to that stage where, Jesus, I'm all right. Do you know what I mean? I can probably have a beer, or I'd celebrate or pat myself on the back and go, geez, that was a good hard 3 months. You should have a pint for that. Um, but when I first went into like an AA room and stopped drinking, and that was 2013, the first time I tried going to a meeting, and I managed to get 2.5 years of like no drinking, but I was still using other substances. Now at the time, it was an improvement on what I was doing because I was drinking towards the end of my drinking. It was drinking around the clock. It was waking up in the morning, drinking what I had left, going to the shop, getting some more, sometimes stealing, hoping that a family member would give me a dig out with money. Wasn't eating much. So going from that to not drinking and still using prescription meds, it was an improvement. I could start working again. Um, I could start being around people more. I could think clearly. It was such a huge improvement, but I was still suffering a bit because about 2 years in, I started to go to other meetings for drugs because my my use of prescription drugs from a very young age was, again, it was out of control. Um, if something says take two every 4 hours, I take four every 2 minutes. It was just no direction whatsoever. I had no safety in my head as to, oh, that's too much. So whether it was pain meds, sleep medication, um, anxiety medication, I would take 3 or 4 times more than what I was supposed to, and that started to take its toll on my health. Um, and I thought, right, I'll go to another meeting. I met some people in the AA meetings, and they said, look, there's other meetings you can go to. When I went there and tried to stop everything, Jesus Christ, everything just I couldn't. I was just left with me, and all these feelings and all these fears that I had way back when I was a kid. Like the reason I started drinking and everything was to escape what was going on in my head. And I was always like a fearful kid. I was always I never really knew what I was scared of, but I was also always just full of fear. That's the best way I can describe it. I was a very anxious kid, and when I took away all the tablets and all the alcohol, and it was just me, I went crazy. I couldn't cope. The anxiety and depression and everything was through the roof. Um, I didn't do what they asked me to do in AA. I literally just stopped drinking, and I thought that was my problem. But they say they say in the meetings as well, like alcohol comes in bottles, alcoholism comes in people. I took the alcohol away, but I was still full of all the isms, and all the rest of it, and I really struggled, really, really struggled, and I went off the rails at that point.
Well, that would seem quite overwhelming, actually. That you've gone from 100 back down to 0 to try and cope, and obviously those medications are going to have effect on your mood, on your depression, on your anxiety. And although you were using a lot of them, taken in a normal dosage probably would have been good for you, taking away the alcohol, but obviously you couldn't do that. So how was that? That must have been quite intense and quite scary. Like,
Yeah, it was when it really, really got bad was when I became a dad for the first time. My eldest son was born in 2015. I really, really struggled when he was born. Um, I wasn't drinking at the time, but I was taking a lot of tablets. I was buying things online that I shouldn't have been buying. I didn't know what was in a lot of the stuff I was taking. Um, I'd come in from work, I'd swallow a load of tablets, and I'd pass out on the couch or on a beanbag or something. Um, and I've often referred to myself back then as a Facebook dad. I'd take pictures with my boy and like all these lovely pictures and stuff like that, and people would say, "You're such a good dad. You're such a great dad," but they didn't know what was going on, like behind closed doors. That I'd get in from work, swallow tablets, fall asleep, wake up the next morning, and I'd be gone out the door. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't present as a dad. I really, really struggled at that time.
and that just goes to show you the presence of social media and how you can manipulate what people think of you and your life and how it is through social media. I think that's a big problem nowadays, but that's kind of like in that first year, what was it like then? Obviously, with your was I don't know if she was your wife or your just your partner at the time. What was it like with that at that stage? Did she realize that this was a problem with you? Obviously, she would have known what had went on before. When you weren't there, weren't present, what was the atmosphere kind of like with her, or was it just okay at the time?
No, it was very tough for her. She didn't know why I was doing it. We kind of got together when around the time where I stopped drinking in 2013. Um, and obviously my eldest son came along in 2015, and like she was having to raise him on her own. That was incredibly difficult. It was her first child as well. Um, so there was all the worries of like for anybody that has children, the first child is always like there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of worry over things, and I wasn't there for her. Like she done pretty much everything on her own around that time, so that wasn't easy, and I wasn't there as a partner either. Um, I would barely contribute. Like we'd pay the rent on the house, and we'd have food in the house. That was it. There was not much else that I contributed around that time, and that sounds awful. And but I have to be honest about it as well. Like I have to own my shit. Like when I was in active addiction, I wasn't a bad person. I was just a sick person desperately trying to get well. Um, and I did things out of character like that. And like I love my sons today. I love my fiance. But if you give me a drink or a drug, that comes first.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen it, and I've been there kind of with alcohol and certain substances, and like you're not a bad person, but the effects of what they have on you has a negative effect on those people. Like there is the negative effects on them. Like you're not doing something bad. It's indirectly you're hurting them in a way, and that's obviously what was going on. Like I said, you weren't there, kind of contributing much, going out and having date nights, and because obviously for her first child, obviously after having children, there's going to be postnatal depression. She's a lot to be dealing with as well. Then on top
Yeah.
of that, so that must have been extremely hard for her. But with those 2 years up in 2017, after you had your first child, like we said, it would have been hard for your partner at the time to be going through what she got. Did she give you that push then to get fully clean? Because obviously what you would have been doing would have been taking a toll on her.
Yeah, that from 15 to 17 were probably the hardest 2 years. I was hiding drinking. I'd started drinking again. Like I relapsed and I was sneaking it. I was driving around in my car, drinking naggins and stuff like that. Um, I'd started using class A drugs again. I'd started using coke on a daily basis. Um, and obviously the cost that goes with that when you're trying to support your fiance and your son. Um, she never once turned her back on me. Like she's the most caring, supportive person that I've ever met in my whole life. I don't know how she didn't get me with an ice pick or something like that when I was asleep. um, she's just the most caring, supportive person. Like around that time, I was telling a lot of lies as well. I was saying that I was going out and going to recovery meetings when I wasn't. I was going out and just driving around, drinking and using on my own. Like it wasn't even like I was out socializing, and it was absolute hell. I was living in absolute hell. And I could not stop, but she always stuck by me. She could have left, or she could have taken our boy and left, but she never did. Um, and like I said, it was a daily thing from, I'd say from 2016 to 2017. It was every single day, and I couldn't stop.
Wow, that's mad. And like that, you're not the only one. Cocaine, especially, is so easy to hide every day. There's a lot of people out there that you wouldn't know. They go home to their house and they sit there and they're on it. Because like that, it's with cocaine, I think, especially you can do with alcohol as well once you get your bit of sleep and sober up. You can function. You can still function. You can still do your job to a good degree. Like you might never excel in your job, but you can
Mm.
get just what's kind of wanted from you done. It's the same with coke. It's the same with drink. Like that, once you've had, you can't be going in drunk, but you can have it after. And do you not find it ironic that the two kind of most social kind of choices, obviously cocaine and alcohol, people end up doing by themselves? It goes from social to
Yeah,
very antisocial.
yeah. I mean, it's years ago since I drank or used drugs socially. Um, long, long time ago. But 2017, like leading up to that, like 2016 and most of 2017 was, like I said, on my own, um, living in fear, in a shitload of debt, and just thinking, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Like I can't stop. Um, I managed to stop drinking from February. I think yeah, it was around February time in 2017. Um, but the other stuff just had me by the balls. It was petrifying because I still had this kind of cockiness around me that sure I can still take stuff. Like I can handle it. Like I can take this and get on with my life, and but I couldn't. And when I wanted to stop, that's when the fear would set in for me, and psychosis, and hearing things and seeing things, and like it's an absolute living hell. That's not overindulgence. That's not out partying. That's not socializing too much. That's addiction. Like plain and simple. That's being addicted to a substance, and you cannot stop, even if you want to. And that's a petrifying place to be in because I had all the lies that I had told that I was trying to live so that I wouldn't get caught out. I had a son at home. I had a fiance at home, trying to keep hold of a job and trying to keep all of this away from my family and stuff. It was full-time job, just trying to live like that.
Yeah, that sounds like a job on top of your actual other job. Like trying to
It's a
do that.
horrible job.
Yeah, it's probably one of the worst jobs now. You couldn't pay me to do it, but psychosis is something that people don't really talk about much. And because I've
Mm,
actually started looking into it recently since I started to talk to people about this, and I've seen it myself now, looking back on people, and they kind of live in their own little world. And like that, you said you tell these lies and you tell these little like you're not doing it to hurt anyone, you're doing it out of more shame, I think. But you live in this little bubble where you think everything's okay. I think that's not highlighted enough as well. And with the like especially the class A's, you've got the paranoia, you've got like that, to hearing things. That's real. Like that's well,
mm.
it's not real, it's you're hearing it in your head, but like that does happen to people. You're sitting there and you're just like, it could be the smallest creak in the house. That's someone and you're like, that's someone coming through the front door, or someone's
Yeah,
coming to get me, and it's like I've no enemies. Why is someone coming to get me? Like, all these
yeah,
crazy thoughts. And like the worst thing as well about class A's is because obviously for people who wouldn't know, you can get drugs on credit, which is called tick. So when you finished up, you're still paying for them. You still have to see that person. And that's, I think, is the hardest part, would be the hardest part. Did you find that at any stage?
yeah. Like I was thousands in debt, absolutely thousands. And if it wasn't for family members and something up there, I don't know what it is, something got me out of it. Um, but yeah, like having nothing, and getting yourself deeper into nothing. Like I was getting further and further away from being zero. in the wrong direction. And like I said, just that growing fear of, fuck, I've got a son, I've got a fiance, we've got a roof over our heads, we've got to keep that going. But that all of that was second. Like that was like, no, I've got to keep, I need to get another one. I need to get another one. And that constant fear, and dealers rarely say no.
Yeah, they know one way or another they're getting their money. Do you know that sort of
Yeah,
way? The money is going
yeah,
to come around eventually. If they like that, they're usually in such like high profit margins or whatever, unless they're doing whatever. But like they can, if it's like that thousands, okay, you're not gonna be. There'll be a payment plan settled. Do you know the sort of
mm,
way? You will be able to pay it off over time. Not that it's not nothing to them, but they know that money's coming in. That's why they won't say no, because obviously there's a fear of what happens if you don't pay. But you got through all that, which I want to say is fantastic, because you went from like, it seems like a lot of flip flopping and back and forward, and a lot of like it feels like you're getting somewhere, then you go down. But describe to me what the last 6 years have felt like, because you said, I said, heard someone talking earlier, and they said, "So what else is there to do on the weekends and stuff like that?" And he goes, I think it was, he said, someone cycling a bike. He goes, "Why would someone cycle a bike when you can sit in a pub?" But these all these things, you obviously, you've obviously took up jujitsu, SPG Tullamore, and you start doing all these other things as well. What, like, you look back on the last 6 years, like how has your life improved in the long term?
yeah. I'd say, like you mentioned, jujitsu. That's a huge part of my recovery. Um, Whatever it is in jujitsu, there's some fucking magic in it that really, really helps people that are traumatized between their ears. Um, and you sit on the mats with people, and I find it very, very similar to recovery. There's no discrimination in there. Like you sit down, different ages, different sexes, different sizes, different backgrounds, but you're on the mats with someone and you're rolling with someone. You're equal. Um, like you learn that don't fear the outcome. Like you get tapped, you slap bump, you go again. You get tapped, you slap bump, you go again. You're learning from mistakes. You're problem solving. So it was really helpful for me at that time to start tuning into that. Um, and as I got further with my recovery, I started dedicating more of my time to my recovery. Um, I tried, I don't know, so many different ways of doing it my way, and my way never works, no matter what I do. So I had to follow the steps that were in that recovery program. And until I did that, I couldn't get peace between my ears. So, like they say, it's a 12-step program. I started working with another alcoholic that had been on a similar journey to me, and he brought me through the steps. And you start looking back in your life, you do an inventory on your life, you make amends to people, you learn about yourself. Like, it's hard. It's really, really, really hard. But the more you get into it, the further you get from the life you had before, and you start to learn like what you're about. Like, because I said to you, when I was drinking in my early years and stuff, I just wanted to fit in all the time. I'd do anything for you to like me. I talk different, I dress different. It didn't matter. I was like this social chameleon that just wanted to blend in somewhere. Um, and then like once I started like working the recovery program and doing things, like I was eating right and doing jujitsu and being honest, and just everything started changing in my life. Like literally everything. I had two more sons. My jobs, I wasn't late all the time. I started getting promotions and things. I paying bills, being an adult. um, just not having like huge, huge debt. Like I'm still paying off some debts today from what I call my past life, because it was just carnage from day one. Um, but yeah, like the last 6 years, it's just been, anybody that knows me before and after, they do often say to me, like on the quiet, Jesus, it's amazing what you've done with your life, because it is two different people. It's completely two different people. I don't relate to that person from 6 years ago anymore. I don't think the same. I don't act the same. Um, Sometimes when I do see people from that I used to hang around with or drink with or use with back in the day and stuff like that, I don't relate to them anymore. Um, sometimes it makes me sad, and when I think of like all the good times and stuff. But then I look at what I have today. Like three little boys. I have a fiance that I should probably marry. We've been engaged for about 9, 10 years. But we've a roof over our heads, and like I said, between my ears, like that fear and all that anxiety and suicide thoughts and stuff, that's all gone.
No, I'm delighted that you've turned it around, and because there is ups and downs. Like I said, it is every day. It's everywhere. Like, and there's this Irish culture is to go have a drink, but I think now I'm glad that like there's a lot more 0-0 options. One thing I don't like about them though is because they're labeled. Do you remember back in the days you had Becks, and
Yeah,
if you wanted to go out and have a drink, right? Because my boss used to do it, and he'd like, you know, sometimes he'd want to go out and have two or three drinks. He wouldn't want to have two or three drinks, but he'd want to go out and socialize. So he'd just get a Becks or whatever, John, and he'd get them to pour it into a glass to make it look like he was out drinking. Because there was this culture of why aren't you drinking? Do you understand?
yeah,
What you get kind of you get excluded, I think, and I think that needs to be done away with. You can see it like it's kind of only in its infancy now with all the zeros, and that will come true because you can probably have better fun, if not more fun, at a party. You can like that. You're still a funny person. You're still that person. You're probably a funnier person and a more pleasant person to be around. And you're not waking up in the morning feeling like death. So, no,
yeah.
congratulations on what you've done. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I think you really do need to marry her. You should have married her after. You should have married her after those 2 years, and after you kind of got clean for years out for putting up with you for the 2 years. But yeah, when you
She's
look
still
back,
putting up with me today, to be honest. She's got three little mini me's running around the house, farting and shitting and eating the place out of it. So she deserves a lot more than me.
and one thing I want to ask you, when you say like some people who knew you before and after, do and they said to you like, Joe, fair play to you, whatever. How does that make you feel? I know you said you don't relate to that person, but in your thinking that at that time you are going to be alive at this stage. Do you know that sort of way?
Yeah,
That you've completely remapped your life. You've changed probably a lot of people's life for the better because obviously with Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, you sponsor people as well. Like, do you do any of that? And how fulfilling is that to be able to pass on advice and experiences you've had to other people to try and keep them off the drink? Because I believe that, like it's like you said, it's very easy to relapse. How is it for you to not that you're 100% accountable for them, but you're I don't want to say accountable, but you've got a responsibility to these people.
yeah. I suppose with the sponsorship thing, like I sponsor four lads at the moment, and all it is I'm bringing them through the steps like I was brought through the steps. I'm no bigger or better than them. It doesn't matter how much clean time or sober time I've got behind me. I can't make them sober and I can't make them drink or use. They just have to follow my lead. That's all they need to do, and that's exactly what I did with my sponsor and what he done with his sponsor. It's more of a guide than anything. And look, that's I feel like doing things like that and trying to help people more, which is why like I like doing things like this because some people are anonymous out of their recovery. And power to them. Like if they are, I completely understand that, but I can't be. I have to reach out to people like that, like some of the guys in the gym, like know my background, they know my story. And I tell people that because not for pats on the back or well done, Shane, you're great. It's because people reach out to me. I share on social media quite often about other people's recovery and my recovery because I know there's a lot of people out there. Everybody knows somebody that has either died or is very, very ill from alcohol or drug use or is in trouble with it. And they don't know where the help is. I'd never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or any form of recovery or anything like that before I walked into those rooms. Um, and the fear of not knowing what's on the other side, thinking the life you have now and the life you've lived so far is all there is. That's all it is, just for a very, very long time, is not true. It's not the case. There is something on the other side of it, and it is amazing. And people do when people do see me and that know me from before and know me now, like I've always wanted people to be proud of me, no matter what. Like when I was drinking and using it, like I did stand up for years. I did stand up comedy, and a lot of that was because I just wanted people to like me. I just wanted attention. And it was kind of the wrong thing, like, to do, but I did it, and I done it for a good few years, and kept going at it, and I, it just made me desperately unhappy after a while. But today, I don't look for people to be proud of me, but I've never had so many people come up to me and say it. People never really said it and came up to me when I was doing things like stand up, or, drinking as much as I could, or, doing stupid things. People say it to me today, and they mean it. And I'm proud of myself. And it's not a cocky thing. Like, I spent most of my life not thinking much of Shane. I hated looking in the mirror and seeing who I was. Today, I can look in the mirror and kind of pat myself on the back and say, "You're doing a good job, lad."
No, and yeah, and congratulations, fair play. Yeah, I'm proud as well. Like you said, we kind of got to talking about this, and if this changes one person's direction, that's a win. So on a sort
Yeah,
of like,
huge win. Yeah,
actually, you bring me back to a question I never even thought of. When you're going into record, or obviously you said you didn't know what they were and you found out. So when I release this, I'm going to try and release some information or links with it so people can find help. I'll put it in my bio. But when you go to that door for the first time, and like I said, you don't know what's behind that door. You're trying to give up drink. What's the anxiety like before you open that handle to go in? Or did you even think about it? Did you just walk straight in, not a breeze? Or did you have any hesitation when you get up to the door?
for me, no. I was at what they call a jumping off point. It was either that or death. That's all I could see. Um, some people go in, try it. It's not for them. And go back out. Some people try it. It is for them, but they're just not ready yet. Um, my experience, I can only kind of speak from my own experience. I went in the first time in 2013 and met some amazing people that I related to. Um, yeah, it is hard. Yeah, it is. Sometimes you're going to come across people you don't like, but I see that on the outside of those rooms as well. The main thing is I went in there, and for it to work, you need to be rigorously honest. Um, it doesn't matter if you suffer from, other mental things like depression, or bipolar, any of those types of things. You can still get recovery if you can be honest. Um, it is frightening. It's one of the best things you'll ever do. If you think you've got a problem with drink or drugs, then I'd say give it a go. But since the pandemic, it's a lot easier. Like, I do a lot of meetings online on Zoom. Um, I do a lot of meetings. A lot of my sponsor lives in another country. I've never met him in person. Um, my previous sponsor before that is over in the States. It's amazing. Like, you can get recovery like in your own home. You don't have to walk into a room. There's so many different ways now that you can get help. And a lot of people just don't know it's there.
Yeah, so hopefully with this, I'm going to look into it a bit more. I'm going to try and get some links or some information off you. So when I do release this, it's going to go onto YouTube. Then I'll throw clips onto Instagram as well, and I'll assign the links to that. I'm actually going to put in one of those Linktree things, and I'm gonna and put stuff in. But no, I want to say fantastic with your recovery and everything you've done, and like that, you should be proud of yourself. Obviously, your boys are going to be proud of you. Your fiance, who should be your wife very soon, I must say, is probably extremely proud of you. And like I said, you were quite lucky with her as well, because a lot of women could have walked.
Mm.
Um, a lot of women could have walked, and you, no one would have disagreed with them as well. So if you didn't have her at that time, that it might have, it could have went another way. But like I said, it has to be down to you as well. You said people aren't ready for recovery. If people are going in and they don't really want it, I think they're always going to kind of come back off it. But
Yeah,
thank you for your time. It's been an absolute
no
pleasure.
worries, man.
It's given me a lot more insights into it as well. And yeah, thank you. Is there anything you want to say before you go, or any advice you'd like to give, or anyone you'd like to thank?
Obviously my fiance, God love her. We will get married one day. We kind of done everything backwards. We moved in together after a year, got engaged after 2 years, um, had three boys. Then we bought a house, arseways, the whole lot. But we're happy, and that's the main thing. But no, it's if it, the one thing I did right from day one, um, up to today, is I kept trying. I kept going. It like even if I relapsed, if I drank or if I used, I kept trying. I kept fighting. I kept going. I kept going. I was a lost cause many times. I had a lot of rock bottoms, but I still kept going. Um, since I've started going to recovery, there's well into double figures the amount of people that have gone through suicide or um suicide or overdose or things like that, and it's horrific. It doesn't get easier when you see people that you share recovery with disappear. So I would just say, like, if you're struggling out there, reach out to someone. um just check online, don't be scared. Like, it's it's not that bad. um like, recovery it is hard, but it's a million times better than the alternative.
Yeah, the alternative is no life, and like I said, there could be you're just going to keep going the way you're going until you basically die, and you're not going to have anyone with you at that stage if you get that bad. But again, thank you again, and I will talk to you very soon. I really appreciate your time. If you ever need it, and reach out. If you ever want to get a message out to people, I'm always here as an outlet for you. So I will talk to you soon.